Hi everyone, welcome to the Visual Dynamics of Upper Paleolithic Art. I'm Julia, and today we're going to get a bit lost in the caves of Europe. Well, not literally, but you know what I mean. So let's start with something that's always puzzled me. Why are there so many animals in these ancient cave paintings and so few humans? I mean, you walk into Lascaux or Chauvet, well, you can't just walk in, but you get the idea. And it's just horses, bison, mammoths everywhere. But people? Hardly any. It's like the animals were the real stars of the show. For ages, people tried to explain this with all sorts of theories. The big one for a while was shamanism, like maybe these paintings were made during trances or altered states, and the artists were connecting with animal spirits or something. But honestly, that idea never really fit all the weird details. It's a bit like trying to use one key for every lock, and it just doesn't work. There are too many oddities, like the way animals are drawn, the places they're painted, the fact that some outlines are so incomplete or faded. The shamanism theory just couldn't explain all of it, and, more importantly, it couldn't really be tested. That's where Derek Hodgson's 2008 article comes in. He basically flipped the whole conversation by saying, hang on, maybe we should look at how the brain actually sees and remembers things. He brought in neuroscience and psychology, stuff like how our visual memory works, how we process ambiguous shapes, and how our mental state can mess with what we see. And, after that, researchers started using new tech to actually test these ideas, and the results really backed him up. I have to say, this all reminds me of being a kid and lying in the grass, staring up at the clouds. Did you ever do that? I'd always spot a dog or a horse or perhaps a dragon in the sky. My mum would say, "That's just your imagination, but honestly, those shapes felt so real to me." I think that's kind of what was happening in those caves. People seeing animals in the cracks and shadows and then making them real with paint or engraving. It's like our brains are just wired to find familiar forms, especially animals in the strangest places. So let's talk about this idea of hyperimagery. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's actually pretty simple. Hyperimagery is when your mind creates really vivid images, but you know they're not actually there. It's not a full-blown hallucination. You're not losing touch with reality. But it's more than just daydreaming. It's like the image is so strong it almost feels real, especially when you're tired or stressed or maybe hungry. I mean, I get hungry, but apparently ancient people became so hungry they saw hyperimages of animals like mammoths. There's this classic experiment called the Perky effect. Such a funny name, right? Where people were asked to imagine an object on a blank screen, but the researchers secretly projected a faint image onto the screen. The participants thought they were just imagining it, but they were actually seeing a real, barely there image. It shows how easily our imagination and perception can get mixed up, especially in dim light or when we're really focused. Now picture those ancient caves. It's dark, you're probably exhausted from hunting or just trying to survive, and the walls are full of cracks, bumps, and weird shadows from your little lamp. It's the perfect setup for hyperimagery. You might see a curve in the rock and bam! Your brain fills in the rest and suddenly there's a horse or a bison staring back at you. Some of the most famous cave art, like the horses at Lascaux, actually use the natural shapes of the cave walls as part of the animal. It's like the artists were collaborating with the cave itself, letting the environment guide what they painted. And, it wasn't just a one-off thing. Once someone saw an animal in a crack or a shadow, it probably became easier for the next person to see it too. It's a bit like when you see a face in a tree knot, and then you can't unsee it. The cave became this kind of feedback loop between the mind and the environment, with each new image reinforcing the next. All right, let's get a bit more technical, but not too much, I promise. So the way we see things isn't just about what's in front of our eyes. It's this constant back and forth between what's actually out there, bottom-up processing, and what we expect to see based on memory and emotion, top-down processing. Our brains are always filling in the gaps, especially when things are ambiguous or when we're in a heightened emotional state. Since Hodgson's article, researchers have done all sorts of experiments to test these ideas. They've used digital mapping to analyse the cave surfaces, looking for patterns in where the animals are painted. Turns out, a lot of the time, the artists really did use natural features as starting points. There have also been psychological studies on how people see images in ambiguous shapes, and not surprisingly, animals come up a lot, probably because evolutionarily, spotting an animal quickly could mean the difference between dinner and being dinner. And that brings us back to why animals are everywhere in this art. They weren't just important for food, they were a constant presence, sometimes dangerous, sometimes awe-inspiring. Our brains are actually wired to pay special attention to animals, especially ones that could help or harm us. I have to admit, I'm a bit obsessed with the cave lions. There's something about seeing those big cats, painted deep in the darkness, that just gives me chills. I wonder if, for the people who made those images, the lions were more than just animals. They were memories, fears, maybe even something sacred. So, to wrap up, what we see on those cave walls isn't just art. It's a window into how ancient minds worked, how they saw the world, and how their brains, just like ours, tried to make sense of the unknown. Next time, we'll dig even deeper into the science and maybe tackle some of the stranger mysteries of cave art. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.